A lesson by the bonfire. The sun had just set, leaving the sky washed in fading gold, soft shadows stretching beneath the pines. Two young students sat upon the quiet forest floor arguing, their voices restless. The first spoke eagerly. "It is the lack of desire that causes suffering," he said. "Look at the ocean. Without the moon's pull, it wouldn't move. Without longing, life has nowhere to go." The other shook his head. "No. Desire itself is the cause. Look at the lake that chases the moon, always reaching for what it can never hold. Desire is like that, endless, grasping what cannot be grasped and suffering for it." Their words circled like winds through the trees, never finding rest. Not far away, their old master walked quietly through the forest, gathering wood in his arms. When he heard their debate, he smiled to himself and stepped into the clearing. The students rose at once, bowing gently. "Master," they said, "we cannot agree. What is the root of suffering?" The master looked at them both, then at the bundle of wood in his hands. He placed it between them and said, "Come, let us see." They quickly took the wood in their arms and followed him. He knelt beside a circle of stones and began to build a fire. The wood cracked softly as it caught, a small flame rising into the cooling air. The forest darkened, and soon the fire became their only light. The master sat back. "Let us test your theories." He turned to the first student. "You believe suffering comes from the lack of desire." The student nodded. The master gestured to the flame. "Tell me, is this fire all it can be, or does it suffer for not burning more?" The student leaned closer. "It can become more. It wants more." The master handed him a piece of wood. "Then, for every desire that arises in your mind, feed the fire." The student smiled. He was sure he was going to turn that small fire into a lovely fire that would warm them all. At first, a simple desire appeared, a softer place to sleep. He placed the wood into the fire. The flames grew. He smiled. Then another came, a home of his own. Another piece, then another. Soon, the thought of desires no longer came one by one. They rushed forward, uninvited, unstoppable, more, more, more. His hands moved faster, filling the fire again and again. The flames rose high. The warmth became heat. The heat became unbearable. The fire roared, angry, restless. Sparks leaped into the night, and the three were forced to step back. Seeing this, the student stopped suddenly. He was panting and sweating. "What happened?" the master asked. The student lowered his eyes. "There is no end. Each desire I fulfill gives birth to another. I will burn all the wood quickly." The fire raged beside them, wild and untamed. The master nodded gently. "If you feed the fire with every desire, the fire will not only consume you, it can also hurt others around you." Then he turned to the second student. "And you? You believe desire itself is the root of suffering?" The student nodded firmly. Now he was extra confident after watching what happened with the other student. The master pointed to a small wooden bucket filled with water, its surface reflecting the trembling firelight. For every desire that arises in your mind, pour water into the flame. The student stepped forward. The desire appeared to travel far beyond the mountains. He poured a small splash. The fire hissed. Another thought arose. Recognition, success. He poured again. The flames weakened. Again and again, he worked quickly, dousing each spark as soon as it appeared. The fire shrunk. The light dimmed. Steam rose softly into the night, then vanished. Soon, only embers remained, a faint glow, barely alive. The warmth disappeared. Cold crept into the space around them. Their breaths turned white in the air. Silence fell, but it was empty and cold. The student stopped, staring at the dying fire. "I cannot remove the last of it," he said. "I feel cold." The master stepped forward. He placed one piece of wood into the embers, then waited. Then gently he tended the flame. Simply watching, the fire returned, steady, warm, alive. The master looked at him. "If you extinguish all your fire, you become cold, disconnected from life itself. What is the point of living if nothing within you burns?" They all sat silently, watching the steady flame for a while. Then the master reached into his robe and pulled out a small cloth bundle. Inside were a few mushrooms. He placed them gently over the fire, turning them slowly as they cooked. As they cooked, a warm, hearty fragrance rose into the night, rich and inviting. The students watched quietly. Then one asked, "But master, how do we control the desires?" The master said nothing. He simply watched the flames. At just the right moment, before the mushrooms burned, he lifted them away. He handed one to each student. "Eat," he said, "to keep your fire steady." They received them with gratitude. The master took a bite, closed his eyes briefly and smiled. Then he said, "You were both watching the desires. But you just need to watch the fire. You watch it. When it needs wood, you feed it. When it grows too wild, you tame it." It took another bite, then added with a quiet grin, "And when you stop arguing about it, you might finally taste it." The student smiled. Above, the stars had begun to appear.